going to do a little exercise together. It's going to require you to get out a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. I'm assigning you homework in the School of Gains. What you're going to do is write down with specific detail what your goal physique is going to look like. I'm going to share with you what I wrote down about a year ago. And the reason I think it's beneficial is that it gives you more of a concrete idea what you're specifically aiming for. If you're committed to the gym and you're in there day after day, slogging away, chucking the weights around, it helps to know what am I working towards specifically. And then as you progress towards it, it allows you to have a better gauge or measure of how you're progressing. Because sometimes day to day, you look in the mirror, you look at the weight, maybe you do some measurements, but it's tough to objectively be like, am I halfway towards my goal physique? Am I 10% of the way there? Am I almost there? Just using your rough estimation of how you look, I've found is not overly effective. And then it doesn't allow you to make adjustments or pivot the way you should based on what your real rate of progress is. So I'm going to outline mine. And then at the end of the video, you're going to write yours down. And then together, we're going to continue to work towards achieving our goal physique. So 1 year ago, I was 210 pounds with 18-inch arms. I'm 6'1", and I would have been 32 years old. And I wrote down here currently with a 4-pack. So, I'm maybe 15% body fat-ish, something like that. Like some definition in the abs, but not a ripped 6-pack situation. And my goal was to get to 225 pounds with a 6-pack. So let's say 10 to 12% body fat, defined 6-pack abs. Not like absolutely peeled, but, and 19-inch arms. So I would roughly estimate that at 210 at the time with a 4-pack, probably, I need to lose 10 pounds of fat. So 200. If I weighed 200, that's probably 10% body fat. And given that, I need to gain 25 pounds of muscle and lose 10 pounds of fat, roughly, to hit my goal of being 225 at 10 to 12% body fat in a 6-pack. And then I need to gain an inch on my arms, 19-inch arms. Fast forward 1 year to today, and I weighed in at 217 pounds, and my arms are 18 and a half inches. And so I would say my body fat percentage is probably about the same. So that means I gained about 7 pounds of muscle in a year, which is great. And I gained a ½ inch on my arms, going from 18 to 18 and a half. So I'm halfway towards my goal of 19-inch arms, going from 18 to 19-inch arms. I'm less than halfway in terms of gaining 25 pounds of muscle. I'm at, I think I gained about 7 pounds of muscle, roughly estimating. Obviously, I'm not getting exact body fat measurements, but just looking in the mirror and looking at my physique, like, probably roughly around 15% body fat. I probably still need to lose another 5 to 10 pounds of fat. I've kind of stayed at roughly the same body fat, just fluctuated up and down as the years gone on. And so that means that I've got, another 18 pounds of muscle to gain to get to, 225 at 10 to 12% body fat. So when I think about that, and I think, okay, it took a year to gain 7 pounds of muscle and a year to gain ½ an inch, which has mostly happened in the last few months after I started TRT. That's made a pretty substantial difference. And whenever I look back and reflect on this, it gives me the frame to assess, am I actually close? In terms of the arm gains, I'm pretty close. In terms of the total amount of body mass gain, not really. Like 7 pounds gained in a year is good progress, but it's not amazing. And obviously, a lot of that is going to be based on how much I can grow my legs. Because even if I gain, more muscle in my arms and upper body, proportionally, it's not going to increase your body weight that much as in comparison to, adding a bunch of meat to your down low spindlies, your lower biceps. So to hit that target, I'm going to need to make some adjustments to my leg training and add substantially more muscle to my legs. Although they're up to 26 inches, which is still an improvement around the quad, which is a decent sized leg, nothing massive, but a decent amount of meat on the lower ham hogs. So that's the goal physique that we're working towards. I believe I can get there. I think that I was pretty much capped out at like 18-inch arms, and before I started TRT back in December, I was like 215. I was fluctuating between 210 and 220, but I would say I was around 215, maybe a little fatter. But I don't think there was no way that I was going to get to this goal of being, 225 pounds at 10% body fat, 19-inch arms, staying 100% natural. At the very least, I needed to try TRT. And for those of you that are new, I did blood work a number of times. Probably for over 2 years, I researched and kind of thought about it and assessed and hummed and hawed. It's not worth it. There's so many different factors that go into that decision that I think a lot of people don't consider. And it came to a point where I was ready to try it, and my levels were in the 400 range, which isn't low, but it's a little below average. And I decided that the gym and this goal is really important to me, and training for muscle gain, training to try to build the most epic physique possible gives me more fulfillment and joy than any other activity in life. And for me, it was worth it to make that decision, to try to continue to progress towards my goals and to be able to accelerate my progress in the gym, doing the thing that I love to do the most. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because if you make it really clear what your goal physique is, it forces you to assess realistically whether or not you're willing to take all the steps or actions to get to that physique, or whether or not it's realistic for you at all. And I'm not here to tell you that you should, make the same decisions as me, but floating around in the abyss, looking up to people with physiques that you admire and, hoping to get there or wishing you looked like that, there's nothing wrong with it, but I found it to be very unfulfilling and not productive, because you're not actually charting a realistic path to whether, you should keep thinking or keep hoping that you could get that. And in fitness, in a lot of cases, there's genetics, there's PEDs, there's, your actions, how hard you train, how consistent you train, how much you sleep, how well you eat. And not everything is realistic for everyone. And to me, nothing is more defeating than working towards an unrealistic goal and not acknowledging or realizing fully that you're being delusional or unrealistic. I think that can be quite defeating. So that's why I want you guys to take the time to write down what your goal physique is, and then look at that piece of paper at least once every couple months and assess how you're progressing. And if it's totally unrealistic, it'll become very clear quickly. Or if it is realistic, it will also become clear. And it'll also help you to identify what steps you will need to take to actually achieve that result. And then push you to assess whether or not you're willing or whether you want to make those decisions. And it could be something as simple as, potentially changing your career path so that you have less stress and more time for the gym. That's a really hard decision that most people don't want to think about. And it's easier to just remain in the abyss of I'm progressing and this is my goal physique, but you're never realistically going to get there because you're not assessing all of the factors that will contribute to that happening. Or, maybe you need to change your nutrition plan and order a meal prep service or hire a coach, or maybe you need to train more often. Going to the gym 3 times a week is not cutting it. And the point that I'm trying to get at is that the more realistic you can be, the more detail specific you can be with what your actual goal is. And you may not know exactly, but if you take the time to think about it and ask yourself and write it down, you're probably going to come up with something specific. And then you'll have a better tool to assess whether you're actually going to see that progress. And progress in the gym is fun, and very motivating if it feels like you're actually taking steps towards that goal. And I think a lot of people's goal physique is just because what's popular in fitness is like the most elite genetics on PEDs with incredible work ethic, with training and nutrition. That's what the most popular physiques look like in terms of muscle build and aesthetics. And I think a lot of people just don't realize what the reality of working towards that or of getting that requires from any individual. And so and then people, you just end up feeling discouraged, right? Because you look at this person and you're like, I'm nowhere near that. Like 2 years later, right? It's frustrating. And so any of you that would be looking at me, I want to make it, transparent what I'm doing and what's like realistic for me and the steps that I'm taking. And I think the decision to do TRT and enter into that world was something that was necessary given my goals. And nobody should tell you necessarily whether you should do something or not to achieve a goal that you are deciding you want for yourself. That's for you to assess and think about and determine, do I want this? Am I doing it for the right reasons? Blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I want to be transparent and make it clear, like, I have good genetics and I'm not doing normal habits. Every day that I go to the gym, I have to do mobility for an hour or an hour and a half just to be able to train. And I feel grateful and blessed that I get the opportunity to go in there and do that. And the workouts honestly are like annihilation sessions. Like a lot of times afterwards, I have like no energy to do anything else because what I'm it's what I'm choosing to put a lot of my energy and focus into because I love it and I have a goal that I'm working towards, and that's how I'm wanting to live my life at this point in time. But for most people that, if you would look at my physique, I don't know if you see everything that goes into it. And, only training arms and legs and like, maybe I could do this or it's a complete lie. It's like if you go to the same extremes that I go to with never missing sessions, like cutting other things out of my life. Like, I did my master's in economics, finished around this time last year. I made the hard decision that I don't want to go into a career in that because I think it's going to take away from my passion in the gym. And it's not necessarily been easy navigating life with that, degree of uncertainty of what your career is. And I invested a significant amount of time, energy, and financial resources into getting that credential. To turn your back on it is hard. Also the, body issues that I've had with imbalances and, the need to do all this warm up and mobility work just to be able to train. Like a lot of people wouldn't want to do that necessarily, or wouldn't be willing to do that, which is fine. And then, developing the mindset to push as hard as I can and keep reassessing how could I train harder? What more could I do? And then eventually getting to the point where I'm like, I think I've done everything I can do naturally. And given my physical limitations, I don't think I can continue to gain muscle, a substantial amount more muscle, and make more progress without at least exploring low doses of testosterone. TRT, or TOT is probably a better term, testosterone optimization therapy, where you're trying to get your levels up near the top of that reference range. And that's what I've been doing, um, to see, what difference that has on muscle gain. And I would say I've probably gained about maybe 3 to 5 pounds of muscle in the past 3 months from that. So it's made a difference, not like a insane difference, but it has helped. And the journey of going through all these steps, and what you don't see when you look at somebody's physical body is the person behind it and the life that they're living, and the choices and decisions and hardships and ups and downs that they have to endure and go through to achieve that result. um this has turned into a ramble, but it's a more realistic view under the hood of like that person's physique or my physique or whoever you're looking up to. There's so much more that goes into it that you don't realize. And so if you write down that that's your goal and that's what you want to achieve, you'll quickly realize that your current set of actions and mentality and habits will not produce the progress that aligns with that goal. And writing it down will make that obvious to you. And then it'll force you to look at what you're doing and start making real decisions as to whether or not you want to do those actions that will produce that goal. And for some of you, you may decide that you don't want to, and that's perfectly fine. That's up to you to decide. Maybe the gym's not that important to you. But most people have lofty goals and a complete underappreciation for the process that will actually produce those goals in the gym. And that leads to more people giving up because they didn't set a realistic goal. And so after you do this, if you realize that, then it could help you to maybe set a more realistic goal. If you still have a lot of things going on in your life and you only have time to be in the gym 3 times a week for an hour, like maybe gaining 5 solid pounds of muscle this year is a realistic goal. I know that doesn't sound sexy and it's not what people want to hear, but maybe that's realistic given the amount of effort, time, and energy and resources you are capable or willing to put into it. Or maybe gaining, half an inch on your arm in 12 months is a realistic goal, which doesn't sound sexy. But that's the reality of the process, which I don't think is like represented or conveyed very well through fitness content. So that's what my hope is. Yeah, for me personally, when I look at my physique, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. But I'm making a lot of sacrifices in my life, and I'm putting my body through a lot and taking some risks and sacrificing other things. And a lot of times there's uncertainty and stress and questioning why, and so I think with anything, if you want a substantial result, it's not going to be an easy path. And there's just such a massive underappreciation for what that path looks like in terms of fitness, muscle gain, transforming your physique. And so I want to encourage you guys to start by taking a step towards appreciating that by writing down your goal physique and reflecting on it frequently so that you start to gain an understanding of what the real process looks like. It will shape and force you to look at your actions and to truthfully audit whether you are doing the things that you need to get X result, and make it more clear what the things, if you haven't figured it out yet, the things are that you need to do to get to that result. Because if you want it bad enough, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out some of the different steps and things, but we all kind of end up staying in our comfortable little shells of what we are willing to sacrifice or willing to do. And it's very easy to state a goal without fully grasping what actions and process need to happen to actually attain said goal. So I just think that's very applicable in the fitness space for anybody who's committed to the gym and wants to transform their physique. I think that's the real truth of it that doesn't get talked about enough. So I hope that hopefully you found this discussion somewhat interesting, thought provoking, and shut the video off, get a piece of paper out, sit there, think about it until you come up with some specific details of what you want your physique to look like. or what your strength gain numbers are. You want to bench X amount, squat X amount, whatever it is in the gym, your goal, write down where you're at, what your body looks like, what your current performance looks like, and what you want that to get to. And I think that's the first step in developing realistic goals for yourself and starting to understand what the process may actually look like to get to that goal. And then, working out will become less frustrating, a little less discouraging, and feel, like you've got more answers as to why you're making the progress that you want to, or you're not making the progress that you want to. Instead of just looking at a certain physique or this and just feeling like you're in the abyss of never getting there and getting frustrated and not understanding why. I've been there too. So that's why I thought it would help you. And that's why I wrote this down, and I look at it every so often and assess, am I getting close? What changes do I need to make? Is it possible for me? Like, get your brain thinking about those things, and then you will come to some conclusions about what some of the next steps are, and then you can make a decision for yourself whether it's worth it for you to make that sacrifice and have an overall better relationship with your body, with working out. That was a ramble fest. If you made it to the end, thanks for stopping by. Go make some freaking gains. Have a great day. Peace.